All right. So hello, everybody. Welcome to this intimate chat with Miko Revereza, director of No Data Plan. As an introduction, Miko Revereza is an award-winning experimental filmmaker educated at Bard College. After moving from Manila as a child, he lived illegally in the United States for many years, though he's now moved to Mexico. His work is strongly influenced by his own struggle with documentation and the exclusion that comes with it. No Data Plan received an award at the Sheffield Doc Fest, was named the #1 documentary and experimental film of 2019 by Hyperallergic, and was among the top 50 films of 2019 according to BFI Sight and Sound. So quite an achievement for a young filmmaker. And if those of you who've seen the film, know that it basically is a sort of a diary of a train trip across the United States that Miko took. So my first question is, did you get on the train thinking you were going to make a film about this trip, or was it something that kind of came to you as you were traveling?
Sure. First, thanks so much, Sam, for having me, and thanks, Smithsonian, and thanks so much for the generous introduction. And thank you all for tuning in. So for your question, with this train journey, I didn't go into it thinking that I was making a film. Basically, the title comes from me at the time not having a data plan on my phone, and having the idea that I'll be on the train and they'll have Wi-Fi that I could just kind of entertain myself with for the 3 days that I'll be on the train. But to kind of backtrack a little bit, I took the train across the country because at the time, my DACA, for those who don't know, DACA is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And that status had expired for me, so then I couldn't fly across the country to get to Bard, so I took the train instead. When I got on the train, they didn't have Wi-Fi, so I didn't really have anything to do for 3 days, because that's pretty much my original plan. And I didn't have a data plan, so then I found myself just kind of filming out the window or just whatever I could find, and I didn't really have an intention of making a film per se. It was kind of just part of the practice of diary filmmaking, of kind of finding things and it catching my eye, and then just deciding to kind of film individual shots for something that might come along later. But I found myself, because I didn't have anything else to entertain myself with, filming most of the time, and I accumulated a lot of footage throughout this trip. Yeah.
And then how did you end up coming up with a sort of structure for the narrative? Because I found the story of your mother and her affair. I mean, it's kind of suspenseful. I thought it was really kind of well built, the way you kind of told the story over and sort of spread it over the period of the journey. So what made you want to combine those two things, your trip across the US and your mother's affair?
Yeah, this was a story that I had been writing as it was developing. And with my work, with my films, I tend to just have all of this material, and they might be different projects, or they might just get pulled into the same project. In this case, I was writing this story, and then I didn't really know where it was going to go. And I had crossed the country on this train and had this footage, and then I was kind of piecing it together. I mean, logically, kind of just chronologically in this way. And then I put the story onto the footage, kind of as a placeholder for a potential other voiceover to come in, and then just to kind of put it there as I don't know, it's just like a placeholder, something that I'll come up with later. But then I found I liked the story there. And then I also found that I was originally going to do a voiceover and speak all of this and read it over the footage. But then I found that I kind of liked it just sitting there silently also, because I really liked the sounds of the train. And every time I attempted to do a voiceover, it was competing with the sounds of the train, or it just wasn't really doing much. I don't know, I found that the train journey was, because it was so long and then I didn't have internet, a lot of it was just inside my head. And a lot of it was like an internal monologue. Sometimes it would be spoken on the phone or like to a fellow passenger, but then a lot of times you'd be carrying this internal monologue that goes not necessarily with the train, but in faraway places, like thinking of, I don't know, this story that my grandmother's telling me from the Philippines, or the story that's happening with my family, with my mother. So I found that being on the train, the mind sort of drifts to these parallel storylines, and I kind of wanted to reflect that.
Yeah, it does have a very lulling rhythm because of all the train sounds really kind of keep you in this. Yeah, I remember it took a while to emerge from the film because of that, the kind of rhythms of the train and all that. I thought it was really, really great. Now, I guess, so this sort of diaristic practice for this film, is this the way you normally work? And are there other filmmakers who've influenced you in that way? Or how did you sort of arrive at this way of making films?
Yeah, I think that's how I normally work. I haven't made like a narrative fictional film yet, although I'm open to it in the future. But I find it kind of natural for me to kind of just approach filmmaking maybe like a photographic practice of having the camera around sometimes and going on walks, or just being present and observing things and observing how I'm perceiving it in that moment, or perceiving it with a sense of poetry of what is or what is being processed, how I'm processing things in my life at the moment. I think that does come from some influence by certain filmmakers, certain diaristic filmmakers like Jonas Mekas and Chantal Akerman and Naomi Kawase. And I think seeing films from them kind of allowed me to see filmmaking as a possibility to just, I don't know, to not have that much and be able to make a film, or you just have yourself and your surroundings, and sort of use film as a way of processing your environment and kind of what you're going through. So yeah, I mean, I think those certain filmmakers really had an effect on my practice, but not just in filmmaking, but just to find that I could use this as like a life process or thought processing tool. Yeah.
Interesting. And in another interview that I read with you, you mentioned that, you know, this sort of resourceful way of making a film, like basically with nothing, no cast, no crew, no money. I think you sort of attributed it to coming from a life as an undocumented person, that you sort of have to be resourceful and improvise just kind of in your daily life, right? So could you expand a little bit more on that?
Sure. Well, in the States, actually, a lot of grants and funding was withheld from undocumented immigrants. And although a lot of the times in grants would say that they want to support this type of storytelling, kind of within the guidelines require you to be a resident. So it really pushes out, it's not even eligible to people with DACA or people with I don't know, like pending green cards or something. Like you have to be a resident or an American citizen. So I feel like just what type of films get funded kind of dictate what type of voices get to tell the story in American documentary filmmaking, especially about the subject of immigration. So I don't know. I think that kind of bothered me, but also it was like, okay, I'm not getting any grants for my films in the States, so I have to be resourceful and I don't know, just make them with no budget. And then I always kind of dreamt of making a film that sort of made a statement like this, like that you can still make really independent cinema, and then where it's really like independent in the sense that you're working with yourself and you're just kind of, it's, I don't know, I feel like more films like that should be supported, like a film that gets shot in like a week or something with zero budget. I think it's kind of unheard of in these days, but I feel like the type of message like a lot of film schools say is that you need this much money, you need like a budget and a huge crew to make a film. But when you just kind of need to, you don't need that. You just need yourself. You need your eye and your experience and a unique way of seeing the world, which I think everybody has. But yeah, I think that resourcefulness stems from being undocumented in America, and then also like, say like with college, I never went to college before I went to my MFA at Bard, and then I had to deal with like not having a university education because financial aid was also withheld from undocumented immigrants. And then so that was always kind of the thing, like how do I create my own education, or how do I create my unique way of filmmaking without having this type of support. And I think it not having those resources allowed for this kind of thing to happen. I mean, even like the limitation of not being able to fly across country is pretty much the conditions that allowed for this film to happen. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you've also talked about the people you met on the train, that in some way, everyone taking this trip across the country by train is there for a very, I guess you put it, unromantic reason. Like in a way, people do it because they need to. It takes a long time. It actually costs more than flying. So could you talk a little bit about the types of people you met and the reasons they were traveling that way?
Yeah, very interesting people along the way. I've taken this train trip 2 times. And yeah, everyone has a reason, and everyone is kind of telling their life story on the train because there's nothing much else to do. So then I overhear a lot of conversations. I think a lot of people on the train are undocumented. So then, they can't fly, or a lot of people just can't fly in general. And for whatever reason, like they just got out of prison, they're on some list, they have like mental health problems, and or for whatever reason, they're taking the train, which takes, as you said, longer and is more expensive. But I've had some really interesting conversations along the way, and I didn't record those really because I feel like, I don't know, I feel a bit weird recording those conversations sometimes. But the voiceovers that do make it in the film are of my friends, and kind of me asking them certain questions as if we were bored on the train. Like, what was your dream last night? Or what music are you listening to? And then they kind of I just let them ramble for a long time.
Yeah, I was wondering, that was my next question, was about those other conversations that are sort of interwoven. And that's, that, I guess that answers my question. It's sort of like simulating train conversations, I guess. Another kind of interesting aspect of this is that, the kind of iconic American journey is east to west. And, this sort of, and this is obviously the reverse of that. And it's also kind of the reverse of that sort of, glamorous story of experiencing the country. Were you consciously thinking of that as the sort of like founding myth of America, the movement west, and yours is going the opposite direction? Was that something that was in your mind as you were making this film?
Not per se, not the reversal of it. Or maybe it crossed my mind, but I didn't really like dwell on it that much. But I will say that I think some of those, those novels, say like In the Road, kind of like had an impact on me growing up on the road. And yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe like arriving from the Philippines and starting our journey from the West. Like I landed in LA, grew up in around San Francisco, but then in my adult life lived in LA also. So kind of like my communities have been in California. And then so it is a sort of a reversal of like going from east to west, but like mine originates in the west and goes east. I did see a movie recently for the first time, and then it was also a west to east road movie. Two Lane Blacktop.
I love Two Lane Blacktop. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was quite unromantic too, and I loved it.
Yeah, that's a great film. So and sort of like growing up as you did undocumented, what is daily life like? Was there a sort of constant concern about being caught, or did that sort of increase under the new administration? I mean, or was it just what you knew? I mean, did you in terms of daily life, what was that like?
I think it changed over time growing up, and then as a child was unaware of it. As is something that my family sort of, I wouldn't say withheld, but it was just too complicated to explain. So it's something that I didn't really understand until like you need certain bureaucratic things to function as like a young adult, say like getting a job or getting your driver's license. Then it became more real, or like going to college. But I think slowly it became more frustrating. And then where there was at first, like the more it seemed like these bureaucratic limitations were placed, the more you could sort of see the bigger picture of it and of how it would affect my life, until like by the time that this administration had come along, it was like, wow, this is I don't know, like I've come across like prior run-ins with border patrol before, just like going to a Marfa, and then yeah, at a certain point, I feel like you get kind of conscious about the potential of getting caught and like a traffic stop or something, and then like a police. You have to start to think about a certain police officer's like politics and how they might take things into their own hands, or whatever. It can get definitely complicated and really frustrating in the States at the moment. And then definitely, I think leading up to this trip, I was frustrated with how things were no longer progressing as in my personal like immigration situation, and not seeing a way out towards a path towards citizenship, despite having lived there for 26 years. And so that's what, by the end of this trip, it was kind of through this making this film, I had decided that I would leave the United States, that it was just too much for me. And through leaving, I know that I'd be exiled from the States and not being able to return. But then it was something that I feel like was a necessary move for me to sort of take agency within my own life with the things that I could do. I can go back to the Philippines and kind of start over, or like go from there. So I moved to Manila for 7 months, and now I find myself in Mexico and kind of just going along with the ride.
Now, was that a hard decision to make, considering that you have to leave your family behind in California and potentially wouldn't be able to see them for years, I guess? I mean, did that weigh on your mind in terms of deciding to leave?
But I think by the time that I had made that decision, it was already decided. Like it was something that I'd played, something that I was playing with for a long time in my head. And then it's almost like the decision itself was just like making the steps towards it. Or like, okay, now I have to renew my passport. And then now I have to make arrangements. And then so all of those kind of things to just like, I don't know, just do it. Just like get on the plane and buy your tickets. And then it becomes very sell as many things as I can. Say bye to all my friends and family. Although my family, my parents are in the process of getting their green card now. So hopefully I'll be able to see them in Mexico at some point in the near future.
I see. So maybe we can end with if you want to talk about what you're working on now. Are you being inspired to do something else in your new surroundings and your new sort of life? Maybe if you'd like to share that.
Sure. Well, I suppose naturally I just kind of I feel like a lot of my films continue on the same sort of trajectory and can be grouped as maybe a single project of that has to do with traveling or migration. So my new project does kind of track that that migration out of the States, and then starts from the States, and then it goes to Manila, and then to this province where my grandmother had spent her childhood and had also seen the American forces land there in World War II with MacArthur, and it's in Pangasinan. So I went there and filmed a little bit. It's kind of just continuing this style of self-observational, personal documentary of going through these places. And then I never know for sure, like what's going to happen. I find myself here in Mexico, like on the other side of the Pacific now. And then so that's now becoming worked into the film, but just playing it by ear and kind of making this next project as things come along.
So someone actually sent a private chat question to me that says, what change would need to take place in America for you to come back, or would you come back?
I don't know if I would live in the States again. And I've found, I don't know, I feel like I'm getting more support institutionally outside of the States. And I like this new type of freedom where I'm like I had this artist residency in Canada. And they gave me like a 9-year visitor visa, which allows me to like travel to other countries that are visa free for Canada. I think that's like really nice compared to being stuck in the States for 26 years with like hardly any rights. So I'm happy outside of the States at the moment. Of course, I'd love to visit at some point before 10 years to see friends and family and like just, eat at the places I miss in LA. But yeah, I think significant changes would have to happen and with how the current immigration system is not working. And I don't know, I mean, like the DREAM Act has been like an ongoing promise for a long time, like 15 years or something or more. And it can never seem to be passed. There was DACA with the Obama administration, and that was helpful for a while with getting like a social security number. It allowed me to get a driver's license and work. But then that's been canceled by the Trump administration, and then it's going through different challenges and all of that. But like it's promised to be canceled, and I think I had renewed my DACA shortly after this train ride, and then it would be expiring around this time. And I imagine a lot of people who were in my situations, DACA status would also expire around this time, if not soon. And that's a lot of people who will suddenly be re-exposed to that risk of becoming detained by immigration and losing those privileges of driving and working. And then so it would have to be like under the table again. But I don't know. I mean, personally, for me, I don't know if working in art or screening with a Smithsonian museum allows me certain privileges in the future, or if any type of like special arrangement could happen with me coming back to the States. It's all speculative, but I imagine that I'm seeing it that I won't be able to return for a long time at least.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that, this crisis is going to really affect the art world in a serious way in terms of what might be available to anyone. I mean, I think arts funding is going to suffer, as many things are, which is unfortunate, but the way it is. I wanted to circle back a little bit to you, to how you ended up skipping college but going to graduate school at Bard, and what got you interested in experimental film in the first place, and kind of put you on this path to the way you make films in this sort of diaristic manner.
Sure. I applied to Bard without an undergraduate degree. Bard is I applied to their MFA program because I kind of wanted to make a statement and just ask around if it was about the possibility of doing it, and sort of challenge these structural frameworks in place that had excluded me from my undergrad in the first place, and seeing if they would be open to letting me apply to grad school. So I emailed a lot of institutions, and I feel like I opened up a certain conversation that was never asked before about these, I don't know, within their administration, well, that's not possible. Well, why not? Because, and then it's kind of can we talk to whoever's in charge of that rule or something? I just wanted to find out more about this system, and then and see what was possible. Certain schools allowed me to apply, and Yale and SAIC in Chicago and Bard. So I applied to those, and I got into a couple of them, and I went to Bard. But part of this was also sort of a statement to see how I could, as an undocumented immigrant, sort of navigate the system or hack the current broken system, and see what kind of agency I can create out of the situation. I think, that kind of comes from my developing art practice, and what I was exposed to growing up. In high school, my photo teacher, Mr. BC at American High School, was pretty radical and would allow me to, I hope he doesn't get in trouble for this, but he would allow me to skip class, and I would take the BART to UC Berkeley to go to the Pacific Film Archive and see experimental films. And that exposed me to a lot of new ways of thinking. Where even in that same photo class, just these punks that would kind of light their prints on fire and throw it in the developer. I thought that was kind of interesting, and kind of also informed a spirit of independence and experimentation. And then I think with art or experimental cinema, you kind of develop a language in which rule breaking is encouraged, or you make your own rules. You develop your own type of language. And then so I found that being as an undocumented immigrant in America, where I was, in a sense, breaking rules already, it was a safe space within art to kind of let me break rules visually or from the lineage or foundation of previous artists. It was kind of an outlet to be like rebellious, I suppose. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. Unless anyone has any questions, I think we maybe can wrap things up. I'll give you all a couple minutes in case you have anything you want to say. All right. I guess not. Well, thanks, Miko, and thanks everyone for coming. Just a reminder to everyone to check our website for upcoming events, and I will see some of you later, I hope. And thanks again, Miko.
Thanks, everybody. Everyone take care out there.
Thanks. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.